things are done on the golf course and all the professionals. Look, I'm a competitive, like, combat sport, football.
You'll lose your fucking mind on the golf course.
But I like golf, and I like the enjoyment of driving around with your friends, being competitive, but enjoying the day.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get better at it. So is that comfortable?
Yep.
It's good.
Nah, we're good.
Put the pillows wherever you want.
Yeah.
If you need it. So
good to go.
Got your water. Hopefully that's a coffee.
It's water.
Oh, okay.
I'm on my, I've done a lot of coffee this morning, so I'm good.
Okay.
I saw the shirt though. Coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The Army in business and trying to get shit done.
Yeah.
Coffee is essential.
Is it good coffee though? Or is it like just, I don't give a shit, it's sludge, I'm going to make it. Yeah.
Well, that's Army coffee.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I'm just wondering the marketing side. Like
I bring my own.
All right.
If Starbucks or Dunkin' could get into the U.S. Army for coffee, just drop their price point, but get their product in it.
Yeah, no shit.
It would. I mean, they're already the biggest, but
right. Yeah.
So Starbucks, Dunkin', we'll talk about that. Let me be the plug. All right. So if it sounds good, check.
Yeah.
All right. What's up, everybody? This is Robert Peppo. I'm here with Peter Hostrawser. I hope I said that right.
Pretty close.
All right.
Hostrawser.
Hostrawser. We're going to call him Teacher H, okay, for short, because I butcher names in general. So, yeah, we're out here today. This is podcast number 40, and I appreciate you coming out to me today. This is something we've talked about for the last maybe a couple months now.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to do yours, which is going to drop soon. So I appreciate that. Today, I'm going to start with a little thing that I found in my notes that I wrote that I think is applicable for us and kind of how we come together on things. Right. Okay. It's not that I've contradicted myself. It's that I've learned and evolved. Life is full of paradox and enigma, satire and seriousness. You have the time and the ability to reinvent, replan, redo, for change is guaranteed. All we have to do is be the change or keep up. So I'm going to introduce Peter real quick, and then we can kind of jump into all this. This is going to be a podcast about business, about teaching, about education, and his journey. So Peter's been educating for about 20 years. He is a business teacher, a consultant, a speaker, a podcast host. But to me, most importantly, he's an educator who is disrupting and evolving the education system. That is what drew me in towards you, and the things that you spoke about since the second I met you. And then once I started to dive deep on what you're doing, spoke to my soul because of the things that I've been through, like quite literally.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. And so, we met, I was at Sandberg, and I was speaking, and you were there, and I've probably seen you in passing doing these things before. I just don't think we spoke in the way we spoke at Sandberg this last time. Right. The evolution of things, and me getting into my zone of who I am and what I want to be, kind of open that up, because you're like, hey, I do a podcast. I'm like, me too. And it was just off from there. So, I want to talk about how you kind of came up at first, kind of like just your educational background. All right. How you were as a student, and how did you get to the point you're at now? And we'll weave a bunch of other things in there. If you care to start there.
Yeah. That's a long journey, man.
Me too.
Yeah. It is interesting. So my father is a math teacher at the high school that I went to, right? I grew up in a small rural town called Walkerton. Shout out to Walkerton. People call it Walkertucky. And it's northern Indiana. And my parents have actually lived in the same house since I was born. So I'm just over 50 right now. So that's how long they've been there. Going up through education, my parents were like public school all the way through. They were like all the way through till I was in 8th grade. You wear khakis, you look good, you school is the shit. Like you respect the hell out of it. So I did. But I learned to play the game through that. I was an athlete in high school. Nothing special, we could play 3 sports because our schools were so small. And my dad was the football coach until my sophomore year. I just played the game, went all the way through. I could go down a path with my dad, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But we were like, you're going to college, right? Underneath all of this as I'm growing up and watching my family, my grandfathers on both sides, my mother's father was an entrepreneur, huge entrepreneur, had 25 five and dime stores called Harvey's. In northern Indiana. He grew up in East Chicago, kind of played around with Chicago a little bit early in his life, World War II vet. And so that's going on. I'm seeing all this stuff happen. My dad's father was a veterinarian, right? And so he immigrated from Germany, hence the only thing that came through was my name, basically, Hostrawser. It's a Hostrawser. I could say it out loud. I don't want to spit on your mics. But so he came through Toronto and then moved to Detroit. So my dad grew up in Detroit, and then they moved to Mishawaka, Indiana, South Bend area. So both of those gentlemen in my life were entrepreneurs. My grandfather on one end held his own on his veterinarian clinic. My grandfather on the other part basically bootstrapped, did what he needed to do after World War II, and came back after 2 years of being injured, almost mortally wounded in the Battle of the Bulge. Wow. Seeing all that. My parents were like, you're going to college. All right, cool. All right. I graduated in 1990. So I didn't know. I just signed up for the college my brother was at because I was like, I don't know where to go. It was Bethel College, now Bethel University. Great little school, just wasn't for me. I broke every single rule there. Socially, I dove into things. And I played the game. I got a few C's and B's or whatever. But I got on radio there. And we broke every rule on it was a Christian school, and I am Christian, but not at that level of Christianity. Yeah. We were pulling strings and everything and trying to get, listeners and such.
But we have a lot of similarities. I don't want to stop your story, but
it's a long one, so we'll
all right, cool.
weave through it.
I went to St. Jude, so Catholic. Mm-hmm. Then I went to Providence, Catholic, and full ride scholarship to St. Xavier, Catholic, right? And I also broke every rule kind of thing. Right. And it's funny to hear that similarity in our mindsets being very similar now with that upbringing. And I wonder if we look back at it, off camera or something, kind of talk about, I wonder with that structure, if it was pulling us into like, can we not be roguish or whatever, but like test it and find the other side of things because mine was very, Catholic, Christian school, but Catholic schools are like, wear your uniform. Yep. We're going to church. We're doing this. And it was so structured. I was like, I need to break this mold kind of thing. Not in a bad way, not in a malicious way or anything, but it's cool to hear you say that. Like I broke all the rules.
So that's funny because I ended up at Valparaiso University, which is a Lutheran university, which was, Luther was the guy who broke the Catholic rule, basically, as they split off if you go back into it. So I ended up at Valparaiso University, and I went through communications, right? I was like, this is cool. This is easy. It was fun. We were doing video productions. Back then, it wasn't the stuff like you have all your stuff here. This was like reel-to-reel shit. Like, we had VHS, SVHS. There was like pre-roll, all this stuff. And so basically I kind of went through that. I got to my internship my senior year of college, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And it was a radio station, like literally cornfields. And then there's this big tower and a small building. And the gentleman, I think he might still be on. His name is Todd Eichow. Really small dude, but this guy like had pictures. Like this was in the Jordan Pippen area, right? Like these guys are just killing it with the Bulls. And he's like bouncing from Valparaiso to Chicago, like talking with Bulls and stuff. And I'm like, that is awesome, But I realized when I saw how much these guys make, not Todd, he was doing pretty well, but like everybody else, I'm like, are you kidding me, man? Like that's like a half a semester of what I just paid to do. What the hell am I going to do? And actually, I didn't really enjoy it that much because they would put you on Saturday mornings. I would be with football coaches, high school, and I would cover games, and I would want to do things, but they were like, hold on, kid, And so I just felt like my creativity was crushed again. Fast forward, I was going through. So what do you do right after that, right? Well, you go to bartending school.
There you go.
So you're in the food industry. You know how crazy it is. Yep. So I was like, all right, you know what? I can put on a pretty good party at school. So why don't I go to bartending? And I did a 2-week course, and I got into bartending, and I got placed at a country club called Knollwood Country Club. It's still there. It's got 36 holes. right on the Indiana-Michigan border. And this is before Notre Dame put together their own course. I think it's Warren or whatever their big course is. So their coaches would come over, and they had a free, reign there because they were like, okay, well, the Notre Dame coaches are here. So yeah, like Lou Holtz would be walking through, and very angry golfer, by the way. Lou Holtz is
so competitive.
You do not talk to that guy on the golf course. But anyway, and then I started seeing people. I'm like, dude, there's like ladies in here in the afternoon playing cards, and they're doing real estate deals, bankers in there. And I'm like, why are these people sitting around drinking beer, playing golf, and making a shit ton of money? I'm like, I would like to do that, right? So that's really where my education really started. There's a vice president of First Source Bank. His name is Jim McGarrah. And I'm pretty sure Jim has passed by now, but I haven't, confirmed that. But he was an amazing dude. He's going to kill me if he's still alive. But he would play basketball and come up at halftime, like they would go down on a half court in the club. He grabbed 3 Coors Lights. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? Here's a guy. He's not hydrating. Well, he kind of is. And we started talking, man. I'm like, what do you do? So he just started telling me about businesses and, First Source Bank at the time. I'm not sure if they still do, but they were the number 1 or number 2 bank loan or management of money for private jet entities. And I was like, holy crap, are you kidding me? This is Indiana.
That's
what,
awesome.
You would think that would be in LA or New York or whatever. So they had all this access. And so, my eyes were bright and I was just soaking in everything.
And you never know who you're going to meet.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And that's where I started to figure out, okay, holy shit, networking is important. Why wasn't I taught any of this? So this is continuing to build. So, your life, starts to come together. And one of the members' sons, he was in marketing. His dad owned a marketing agency, and he was kind of on his way out. He was about ready to retire. And his son was like, yo, you want to, sublet my parents' place in Lehigh Acres in Florida, and we can move together, and just go down there and mess around and learn some shit. And I'm like, yeah,
sounds
right.
good.
I got nothing else to do. I'm done with this bartending thing. I don't want to. So I went down, basically just packed up everything, put it in a car. We both drove down. Now, the thing is with this young man, he was a previous addict, right? And we actually met while he sat at the bar at the country club, and he ordered a Coke, right? So this is where opportunity comes everywhere. And I was like, all right, you want Coke? All right, that's cool. That's all I said to him. Robert, that's it. And that was it. He was like, really? That's cool? I'm like a bartender, not giving me shit about not ordering a beer or something. I'm like, I don't know. You want a Coke? Get a fucking Coke. I don't care.
Right.
And we created a relationship. He opened up. He was like, yo, man, I was addicted to, all this stuff. I've been sober X, Y, Z. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we established a friendship. So now I started to learn not only about business, but I started to learn about people, addictions, all this. Dude, I was in health class.
Yep.
I was a business minor at Valparaiso. I didn't learn anything about all this real life stuff. So this is experiential. And again, I'm going to get to this when it comes to me as an educator, because I think it's super important for people to know these things. So as we went through, we moved down there. I bounced around a few jobs. I got into front desk at a hotel in Fort Myers Beach. I was going to get into the bartending game down there, and then a golf course maintenance opened up, and I'm like, all right, this is cool. I'm gonna try this, mowing greens. So down there, it was Bonita Bay Properties, and they were building 2 PGA qualifying courses. They have 3 courses. There's a shit ton of money down here, right? And I'm just like, my grandparents at the time are retired in Naples. I'm up by Fort Myers area, and so I'm connecting with them every once in a while. But I'm working on this golf course, and here are the other opportunities, right? You're learning horticulture and how to grow stuff, how to take care of plants, and there's a lot of biology, and this is nuts, and I'm not thinking about this as I'm going through it, but looking back, you see all this. And then a lot of our workers were from Panama and Central America. Well, I took 2 years of Spanish in high school. I could tell you where I need to go to the bathroom and how to order a beer,
Right.
but that's it. I started to learn Spanish from these I call them the Panamaniacs. They're great. I mean, this is a family, huge family, and now I'm learning culture, you know, and all this is starting to come together. And I finally get behind me, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, you know what? I never used this college degree, video broadcasting, whatever, radio. My college roommate was like, yo, in Warsaw, Indiana, he's like, if you come back, I got a job for you. It's on a cable access. Those who know Wayne's World, right? So you want to start this thing. So I moved back. We started, working with each other. There was an entrepreneur who was doing their thing. And he was a good dude, taught us a lot. But then again, my creativity started branching out, and that threatened people. That threatens people.
Mm-hmm, sure
Creativity threatens the hell out of people. And so as we started to do some pretty cool things, this is when ESPN was pulling those commercials that were funny as hell, and they still are, but like that's when they first started them. An athlete would come in and they'd be like, why the hell is, so-and-so Jordan walking through or whatever. So we started doing that with high school coaches that we were covering in Warsaw, Indiana. And by the way, I don't know, this is a trivia thing. So for Hoosiers, the basketball, movie, they took a lot of players from Warsaw, Indiana to actually act in that movie. So it was kind of, that's how big of a,
cool.
basketball time this is. So we started doing that, and it started pissing off like the owner. He was like, what the fuck are you guys doing, man? Like, this isn't a joke. And I'm like, no, dude, like we're trying to build, there was a show of an old dude, who, he's great. Like he was just like a staple in the community. This guy's like 65 years old. Sounded like he smoked like 70 cigars a day, and he would talk basketball. And we're in the mecca of basketball in Indiana. And he just started to get pissed off at us. And we're like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, we're trying to get more people to watch.
He's missing it.
Yeah, he's just missing it. I'm like, I'm not doing this to make myself look cool or anything. I'm doing this to try to grow. I want to know the numbers, the data. And it just wasn't having it, right? So my college roommate was the other one who brought me back up, and we were both working at this place. Well, we were like, fuck it, let's go start our own. And we screwed up so bad. It was called Midwest Premier Productions. We started doing, videos, but the problem was, just like anything, we started creating videos and things like that. We get like a $2,000 check, and we're like, all right, let's go get a steak dinner and have some beer and whatever. And then, oh shit, I got to pay the rent again. So let's keep going, So that kind of cycled in, and I learned everything about business there, starting with that.
What age were you at that point?
20, let's see, that would have been, probably like 23, 24 years old.
Like
now, here's the funny part about this, connecting back to Jim McGarrett, right? We needed a loan. Like, so we were faxing shit out to New York, out to LA, because we needed a bunch of stuff. We needed all the decks. We needed a camera. We needed all this stuff. Now,
you needed way more than you do now.
100%. The iPhone is 10 times better than what we had. But so our initial pricing was about $65,000, $70,000, right? And here's a couple of dudes who don't have anything to their name, and we're just, basically screwing around, right? And we got on fax machines, and this is before, right around the internet was just, evolving, but you didn't buy much stuff on the internet. And so we were sending faxes back and forth, and we were like pitting companies against each other. We got that all the way down to about $24,000. No shit. Like, we're working with these, and it took a full day to do this. And I tell my students this because that's $50,000-ish, $40,000 of one day of work, if you want to look at it that way, right? So I took the list, and I went to Jim McGarrett, and I'm like, I went to his office, walked right in, set it up, telephone, you don't do all this stuff online. And he's like, come on in. And I set one piece of paper on his desk, and it had the list, and he said, no, this $24,000 and some cents. And he's like, if I didn't know you, I'd kick you out of this bank right now. And I was just like, I got embarrassed. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? Jim, dude, we're buddies.
Yeah.
Like, what do you? He's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you how to make a business plan. And right there, Jim McGarrett taught me how to make an entire business plan. Now, it's been, business model canvas is a little different now. It has evolved. 3 days later, we created, my business partner and myself, a 64-page. I didn't write more than 2 pages in college, high school, whatever. 64-page business plan with, projections, all this stuff in 3 days. And that's when I knew. I was like, why are we not teaching people this, right? So going through all of that, and then realizing I am getting to education. I'm very close.
No, this is uncensored. This is no time limit. So yeah, please. So, I love the context.
Yeah. So as we get the loan, right? We set up a payment plan, do all that shit. So we start to do our books and everything like that. And we do it for a couple of years, and we're making ends meet barely. By no means we're thinking we're gonna be driving around in fucking Porsches and shit. And we're like, yeah, man, we're listening to like Big Time by God, I can't even remember the artist name. But anyway, Peter Gabriel, right? We're putting this stuff together, and then finally I'm just like, you know what, I gotta get another job because I'm not making what I need to be making. And Eric, my business partner, was getting married. He was in Jackson, Michigan at that time. I was in Lansing, Michigan. So we were doing stuff in Detroit. We were doing stuff in Chicago. We were doing stuff in area of Michigan, basically all over Michigan. And so what I did was I knew I needed to learn more about sales. So I was like, neither one of us really wanted to go out and sell shit. We just wanted to do it. And so I hooked up in a hotel somewhere where they were doing all those random interviews and stuff. Now they do it all online, but you like go to like a Super 8, yep. And then they were like, yo, come on over, right? Yep. And so I sat down, and the woman's name is Deneen Shoemaker, and she was amazing. She's one of the best managers that I've ever worked for, especially in sales. The most empathetic, understanding person in the world. And she's like, all right, here's this 24-year-old cocky son of a bitch you want to sell. All right. And they were working for Auto Trader. It's a big shout out to Auto Trader at the time because they had magazines.
Oh, yeah.
And our job was to teach people, our clients, that they're going to sell cars online. And so what better way to learn how to sell to the masters salespeople of used car market, right? Like the fucking hardest, like these guys negotiate, like they will take your life away from you for that freaking Mazda Miata or whatever they're selling, right? So I'm like, all right, let's go. So I started doing that. I did that for about a year. I learned a ton. I learned that what made a car dealership great or why no one ever went to the car dealership. I learned how to create value and teach, and then also learn going through that. I mean, there were times I would go to these small mom and pop shops that, they'd have a lot in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, because I had a huge area. It's basically from, central Michigan all the way to northern Indiana, all the way across. And I would drive these mom and pop shops.
There used to be a ton of those.
Oh, yeah. And so they would have like 10 cars out front. And they would be advertising like there was an Indiana RV trader, and then there was Auto Trader, which we were in competition. And I remember just kind of going in, and consistency. And we'll talk about consistency today. But consistently going into these guys, and they would love. Who wouldn't love to pick on the 24-year-old college idiot who walks in and you're trying to sell me something, son, and they're all trying to outman each other and everything. And there was one time I remember walking in, and it was like the 5th or 6th time, and they're like, "Oh boy, here comes Hostrawser again," and I was just like, I must have missed lunch or something, and I was like, "Fuck this." So I took the magazines and I threw them on his desk, and I was like, there is no better fucking target marketing than what you have on your desk. Call me when you're ready. And I walked out.
Bam.
Next week, I got it. It was crazy. Like, again, that's your creativity. It's like pushing out your anger or whatever. And I knew these, it wasn't like, you'd walk into, I wouldn't walk into a guy like first time and just do that. But I just knew these guys. And so I learned from them, but it was a knee-jerk reaction. And I was like, fuck it. You know what? I'm done with these guys. They're laughing at me already. Here. And yeah, I mean, you start to get clients like that.
But that's also you kind of learning those people, learning that 100%. Market, understanding how you already set this up. They're the used car salesman, right? That's just an old adage everyone might understand.
Oh, yeah.
And people have approached me not the right way, and then they get to learn me know that I'm rogue. For one, I want it straight.
Right.
I've been around the block. You know how many people fucking call me every day for a
Yeah.
sponsorship, for selling something for this. And I had a DoorDash guy call. He's like, you know what? Amazon bought us, and they really just want us to make these sales.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm like, dude, thank you.
Yeah. Right.
And then I talked to him.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, no.
Yeah. I love
because he
that.
found some truth.
Right.
A comment.
Right.
He knew I wasn't fucking wanting to hear this.
Right. It's weird though, because some people on the sales realm, they want to juice it a little bit. They're like, what do you got for me, man? Put me in a golf outing, do something, give me some like free bags or something, you know? And that's cool. It is what it is, but you gotta realize that. And that's what I learned through this whole experience. Again, none of this, I'm a business fucking minor, almost to a CPA, never heard one lick of that in college, right? And I love my professors. They were good people, but like, dude, they had no idea. So after I kind of went into that, I did meet my now wife. She was my girlfriend then, and she was an elementary school teacher. And so basically what she had is she was a reading specialist, but she was teaching, I was trying to think of what the school's name was, Madison or something like that. It was in the Penn District. So I'm not sure if Prospect, you might have played Mishawaka Penn. It was a huge football school in Indiana.
Don't recall. It doesn't sound familiar.
So sometimes they do cross the state lines here. So she was like, we have an opportunity here. They want to do weekly video announcements or daily video announcements where you come in once a week and you record them all with students. And this was still back in VHS days and everything like that. And they're like, there's a small stipend for it. I'm like, all right, make a little cash, work with some kids, 3rd through 5th graders. All right. So I would go in like on a Monday and they would say, all right, here's all the information, get these kids to do it. And then each room had the VCR in it back in the day. And so I would sit down with these kids and, you know, the teachers were like, okay, well, this kid is this kid, this kid's that kid. They would label the fuck out of them. They were like, all right, this kid's a great academic kid. This kid is like Robert Peppo. Get him the fuck out of my class. You know,
probably.
Like,
that's why I really wonder what they were saying.
But they were like, they would say that. And I was like, okay. So in my head, I'm trying to think, all right. And I was like, I don't give a shit about all that. Right. For some reason, I just didn't care. And I was like, okay, let's go. What do you guys want to do first? And, you know, one kid would be like, I want to be on the camera. I want to be the editor, da-da-da. And back there's a lot of math. There's a lot of English. There's a lot of writing. There's a lot of speaking. You know, you got to get in front of a camera like we are here and actually talk to your entire school.
That's nerve-wracking for kids.
Yeah,
it's nerve-wracking for a lot of people.
Yeah. And so we did these, and we had a lot of fun with them. You know, I taught these kids how to edit, how to do all this stuff. And what I saw is the teachers were coming back. The academic kids were, quote unquote, they already knew how to play the game. They were enjoying it. The kid who was the Robert Peppo was like killing it now in math and in English because he attached it to something. The teachers were coming back and like, what the hell are you doing, Robert? You know, I'm like, I don't know. We're making freaking morning announcements. Like, what? And so, that was the switch. That's my why right there. And so putting together my whole path and getting into the point where I get to see kids actually way before I would even think about business or experiencing something and learning from it rather than just book learning, which it has its place. That was it. I was like, wait, I have an opportunity here. Went back and got my business education degree. Actually went back to Bethel College or Bethel University. And, you know, you talk about when you were deployed right after 9/11. I was actually doing student teaching when that was happening. And we were watching that live in a classroom while my college professor was there giving me an observation. I have the observation. I will never get rid of it because it's something I want to pass down to my kids. And after that, I did get a job, you know, the halfway through. But after that moment, I was like, if I can teach you that, there's nothing. I don't give a shit. Like, you know, we're going to talk about like the chat GPT and stuff. That, are you kidding me? Like, fucking terrorist attack. Like, I taught through a terrorist attack. Nothing can stop you. Like, and then so as you're thinking about, so I got into business and I just started.
Well, I like having that key moment. Yeah. I hook onto a lot of those. because I often try and reevaluate, look back, reflect, and I find these key moments that made those switches. I believe someone like you or me would have gotten there at some key moment, but I'm glad we've had those things and we're able to recognize it, and then it makes us apply it. So, I applied it into business or my personal life and self-development, and then you apply it by going back to school, getting your teaching degree, saying like, okay, I can do something here.
Right.
I see the missteps or whatever, and now let me do something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so so you go back, you get your teaching degree. Were you ready to disrupt then, or did you have to find your way and add and kind of grow into it, right?
That's a good question. No, I don't think so. I was just like, all right, let's go. I'm going to play my own game here.
You saw some value that you could bring to it.
Right. And I remember I taught one semester at, it was called Elkhart Memorial High School. And they have now, there was an Elkhart Central and Elkhart Memorial. They have now combined. I remember getting into the classroom, and I had an entrepreneurship class. I had a computer applications courses. It was block scheduling, which is all, leading up into, I hate the 8-period day. I mean, I can tolerate it. I do what I do in it, but giving kids time, it was important. That was the only one in my 20-year career that I taught in a block schedule, and absolutely loved it. What started happening then in that learning process is I remember I had a kid. I remember distinctly a kid came up to me and he was just fucking around in class. And I'm like, dude, this is business, man. Like, why are you not? So now I'm thinking I'm just coming out of, all the school stuff, but also remembering that 5th grader, Robert, who I'm like, this kid hates school. Why is this kid not doing this? Like, I'm doing it the same. And, we had some conversations about like family issues and stuff like that. I had a girl who was head over heels in love with her boyfriend who had just graduated the year before, and she's having these conversations, and then, come around March or April, he dumps her and she's devastated. So I'm like, oh, here's the back end of learning, teaching and learning.
Sure.
Like, they don't teach you that shit in college.
How do you navigate that?
So now I'm like, okay, so, all right, well, push your life aside and get an A on this. I mean, no, I mean, it doesn't work that way. So as I'm collecting all these. So then my wife was like, we lived apart our second year of marriage. She went to University of Michigan to get a master's degree, which was amazing. It was fun. I got to go to U of M games. Sorry, if you're a Notre Dame fan, but which my brothers went to Notre Dame. So holidays were interesting. But so she went there, and I was doing my student teaching, got my job, and then she came back. She made a ton of connects. She took a risk. I saw her take a risk. She was very kind of like, I wanted to stay in northern Indiana, and then she was like, we're moving to Chicago. And I was on a 2-week marine biology trip in the summertime with about 30 kids. We were camping the whole way, 2 weeks. We'd stop in Ohio, we stop in Boston, we went up to Bar Harbor, Maine, and we were in tents. And I remember we didn't have cell phones, or the cell phones didn't have the coverage, or it was like $90 a minute. So she called on a payphone, and I'm talking to her on a payphone, and she's like, we're moving to Chicago. I'm like, I don't give a shit where we move right now. I've been in a tent for 2 weeks, So she was like, either one of us get a job, we're going. We went and lived up by, Wrigley Field. I'm a Sox fan, so it was very difficult for me. But it was crazy. I got a job at Proviso East High School, so it's predominantly black and brown students. And at the time, there was a huge problem with gang activity in the Maywood area. And I remember the day before I walked into that school, I'm like, dude, I grew up in a small white rural and community, and I asked my wife, I'm like, what the fuck am I going to say to these kids? Like, they're going to see some dude coming from a cornfield, and, she had just done a whole, master's degree in language literacy and culture. So she was kind of, she had a lot of tools in her toolboxes, and she taught as well with a little bit more diversity than I did. And she was just like, shut up and listen. It was the best 2 years of my life.
Yeah.
Because, going towards disrupting, I was hearing these students, listening to them. I mean, Robert, we had a kid whose brother was murdered the day before, and he comes to school the next day. Like, you're just like,
Yeah.
What, like, and, I had NBA stars, like Shannon Brown was in my class. Amazing, right? And you just learn from all their stories.
Is that where you maybe met Luke Gwain? Were you just with him, the rapper kid?
No, that was in Oak Park. Yeah. So
and I've followed his story for a long time. I saw you post. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
is this?
right. That's crazy.
Talented guy.
So, yeah, Luke is.
But I don't know where he,
No, he's Oak Parker. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He went to Oak Park in River Forest High School, where I then moved to. And I remember, like going through Oak Park and River Forest High Schools, it was a change. You had basically fabric of the United States there, right? You had the West Side kids, you had Oak Park, you had River Forest, you had anybody who had $0 to $1 billion come into the school, all these different things. And so again, that was a learning journey. But what bugged me about all the schools, and it didn't matter where, and it's everywhere, is they're all like, yeah, we're diverse, yeah, we're trying new things, but underneath it, it's not moving fast. It's not moving fast enough.
And the world is moving fast.
100%. Remind me to tell you about the horse and the Tesla. All right, we'll get into that in a minute. But so
I'll write it down.
Yeah, as I'm going through this whole like piece, and Oak Park's an innovative school. I would say Proviso East, Proviso District 208 is innovative, right? Because you have to be, but it's not moving fucking fast enough. And again, my creativity is like I push bounds, and we were able to. He's a doctor now, Dr. Tyrone Williams, myself, and Lindy Novotny, who is an amazing art teacher at Oak Park and River Forest High School. We were like, you know what, fuck this, we got to do something. So let's do an EF tour. It's Education First tour, and there is a Education is a Human Right tour where you go across Europe. You jump into Amsterdam. I would highly suggest never taking high school kids to Amsterdam.
I've been there. I don't remember most of it.
That's not a coffee shop, by the way. So anyway, we went through Amsterdam, The Hague. We went through Paris. And I've only been over the pond like once before this, and then maybe twice in Germany, and I think everybody goes to Ireland. I don't know, do they? So we brought all these kids, and then through Switzerland. We walked through, Geneva, and then we went through Davos, and we saw like Sir Ken Robinson speak. We saw like it was design thinking, and they got out of the way of the students. And when we got out of the way of the students started creating a school. And I was like, it was a mind fuck. Like, I was like,
it's awesome.
Wait a minute. Like, you're seeing this. And they started creating apps. And this is way pre all the stuff you see out there. And so these kids are like creating all this stuff. And I'm just like, well, this needs to be heard, like more. Like, what we wanted to do is bring it back to the school. And Dr. Williams, it wasn't a doctor then, but he was just like, yo, let's see what they do. Let's call them out. A history teacher, and he was the teacher that you hated to have, but later on you thanked the fuck out of that guy because he pushed you. And he pushed me, actually on this trip, and we were doing like, the website and everything. We were doing updates. It was amazing. That trip was when I started to say, you know what? No, I'm not. I could teach the same thing for 30 years and cash it in, enjoy my life. I wouldn't enjoy it, but or I could grow and create and continue to, because who I am is creativity. And so it was crazy because honestly, like we were, I think I might have slept like 2 or 3 hours every night. And it wasn't worrying about the kids. It was just because when the kids were in any sort of hotel or whatever we were, they just killed the bandwidth because they're all like on their computers and shit. And I got to upload stuff. And we had a Weebly at the time. And so I'm sending pictures back to parents and stuff, and I'm doing all this marketing on it. It's amazing, and I think the website might still be out there. But when we came back, it was just like, good job. And I'm like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. So I started Disrupt Education. That was a YouTube channel. How this whole thing started is the kid said, H, and he's my web designer. I'll give you his name is Dan Bevan, and if you look him up on websites and processes, he's a killer. He's mid-20s now. He was like, you're the Gary Vee of teaching. I'm like, who the fuck is
Hell
Gary
yeah.
Vee? And so that's it.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then from that point on, I just constantly started asking kids, how would you change education? You're pissed off about it. And it would be kids who were AP kids. It would be kids who were burnouts or whatever. Any kind of label you put on a kid, I was asking them. And actually, when you're talking about Luke Gaughan, Luke was on the podcast. And this is his up and coming. He's got a very interesting story.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid's got just a killer head injury that put him out of school. His mom was like, he always wanted to get into the rap game and do those things. Now I have this kid in class, right? I'm privileged enough to learn from this kid or any of my students. And I'm their student as well. And so, I saw his journey, all these kids' journeys.
Wow. It's interesting. I want to touch on the topic. You've said it twice now about learning as a teacher. Mm-hmm. All right. And so that's my whole thing too, continuing to learn. Yeah. It is literally an ever evolving thing. But I think kids probably don't realize that the teachers, or some of them, the good ones like you, are trying to learn from them. Right. Also trying to improve what they're doing by learning other things, talking to other business owners, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's a critical part of keeping up. It's kind of what I alluded to in the first intro I put in here. Yeah. You either are the change or you better keep up with it. Yeah. And I hope the kids, they learn it through you, for sure. I hope the kids realize that should be a part of it. They're not mutually exclusive. I think they should be together. Yeah. And however you do that, you're the educator here. I don't know. Right. I don't know how to tie that in, but you've said it twice, and I love it. Right. Because you need to. You need to do that.
Kids will call you out. Like, they know, like, if look, anybody, in this day and age, dude, like, if you wanted to teach math, science, English, business, art, you could learn it on your own anywhere for free. Yep. Like, you can. Yep. Like, that's it. It's just now you've got to build confidence. You got to understand who you are, what your skill sets are. You got to understand your blockers, right? And then you have to continue through those. And those are changing it used to be like every 6-7 years. It's every fucking year now. Yeah. Like, these kids, like, so COVID. All right. So now I'm dealing with, my own son.
Man, that was
senior,
something.
right? So right in his very formative year where your thought and your ideas in school, your motivation drops off, is after, there's several of them that happen, but after your sophomore year or in your sophomore year is a huge one. It's like, all right, I'm not a freshman anymore. This was kind of fun last year, but I got fucking 3 more years of this. Mm-hmm. And they just, and that's proven. Like, there's studies out there. My son was in COVID during that. And, he would play the game up in his room on his computer, but he was like, now school has invaded me. Yep. And he was pissed. And, that's affected him. That's affected this whole, like, senior class. And then, then you go back to, my daughter is a freshman. Well, she struggled because she liked the social pieces of it, and she was in middle school.
It's super important.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So now you're seeing these different areas where students were yanked, whatever it was, from their normality. And then, you have to learn with them. You're like, okay, now there's no way we can go back to what it was. And I hate when people say, oh man, we're back to normal. I'm like, normal sucked. And then it sucked worse because we didn't know what we were supposed to be doing. And by the way, that's okay. All this sucking is good. It's how you learn. But if we don't learn from it, we're going to really suck. Yeah. And right now, I'll tell you what, like, there's 3 to 7% drops in public education across this United States right now. Like, those are huge numbers. We're talking over 1 million people not going to public school anymore because they're like, fuck it. Like, you're not meeting what we're supposed to be doing. If you're not going to the college route where there's 10 to 15%, and it works for them, right? It worked for me. I know how to play the game, but it didn't really work for me in understanding who I am, what the skill sets are. And I don't have the right answer, and I don't think there is one right answer. But so that, my point is, you have to change with the students. You have to. And that's where, right now we're going to get into, like, AI. We're going to talk about all these other things. But, like, if you're just going to shut it down and say, you know what, the internet doesn't exist. Your phone, put it away forever. I don't want to see it in here. And so you don't even have to write it down. I'll go back into the horse and the Tesla, right? If you're going to do that, we're going to continue to teach students how to feed horses. Who the fuck needs to know how to feed a horse? Very few people need to know how to. But back in the day, you should understand because that's how you got from point A to B, right? Mm-hmm. So why are we still teaching students how to feed a horse when we should be teaching them how to wire some sort of renewable energy to their car or whatever it is, even if you have, a fuel-based car. I'm not, I'm going to go into that whole political thing, but like, how do you fix that thing, right? But we're like, oh, well, you really should know where this started. So we're going to teach you how to feed a horse. Nobody cares about feeding a horse. No one cares about it anymore. And so,
or make that like a blurb.
Yeah.
Like make that a. Yeah. I understand the build of things, but let's not focus where we're not anymore.
We'll focus entire courses on feeding a horse still, right? Like, So I think that's I think where there's opportunity, there's excitement.
Do you think this is true in private and public education and at all levels?
Oh, it's got to be. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Private is driven by depending on what their market is, right? So, typically, I'm going to stereotype here because this is kind of what I know. Typically, if you go to a private school right now, or maybe like 5 years ago, that window, and maybe you can ask her, help me understand why you did go to Providence and you didn't go to
football only.
Yeah.
It was not education.
Okay. So, but even that's a customer, right?
Yep.
You're going there, maybe kids are going to, like, I'm from Oak Park, River Forest, like they're going to Fenwick or Nazareth Academy or whatever. I have heard parents like, they're not helping my kid get ready for college. So shit, I got to get them into here. They're around too many people who are negative influences. Their counselors are overloaded, blah, 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 whatever. And I also heard the other side of it too. I mean, I've heard people who put their kids in private school and are like, yo, I'm paying $20,000, bro. Like, I'm not getting, the customer service. But it all depends right now on what the previous generation or two generations ahead look at. That's a hard change. And that's why when we look at education, it's the Titanic. We can't turn that big ship around because you're already one or two generations. But here's what happened, right? Millennials. God bless the millennials, right? You used to be people like, fucking millennials, avocado bread or whatever. But here's the best part about the opportunity that millennials bring. Their parents now, and their parents of students coming into, and I'm speaking generally around the high school level. They're parents of high school kids, and they still have $80,000 in debt from a fucking college that they aren't even using anymore. And they're like, yeah, my kid ain't going to do that.
Yeah.
And so this is why you're seeing different things, but yeah, I mean, you have to change. You have to change to see what the customer and what the economy wants. So a lot of people arguing about academics. Well, you're not teaching thought, or the capitalistic view is just pushing people down, which I don't believe. I think capitalism is a great thing. I think freedom is a great thing. I think that,
So do you think business has college maybe in particular, has become a business? Literally feeding into thing that they are complaining that, it's feeding. It is that. Yeah. It's a massive business.
100%.
Right? And so...
Yeah. Even the testing to get into it is a business, right? And that's okay. Like, that's fine. But forcing people to do these things and how do I talk about forcing? I'm talking about like tax levies and different things like that. So, right, the way that a school, and a lot of people are like, these fucking administrators, you can't blame administration. They're trying to run it according to the rules that they're given.
Right.
You can't, right? There are some better administrators and worse. I don't want to have that argument, but like they have to do things or they're going to get sued and lose their job. There are some rogue ones out there, some really good ones out there. Ken Wallace from Maine Township Schools, killer. Love that dude. So if you read any of his stuff, he's basically fighting against this, and he's not just like, fuck you politics. Like he's like, yeah, this is what we need and this is what we're doing. They got great programs there. I would even say the new superintendent. I didn't know the old superintendent at 2:30. You know, why can't I think of his last name? He's going to kill me.
I can't fill in the gap.
Yeah,
for you.
so it's all good. But he's like seeing it, right? And you still have to play a game. It's a dance, right? This is why I hate politics. I can't dance.
Yeah.
You know, well, I can dance.
No, business is the same way with the customers
exactly.
and the tax.
Yeah. So what if your school does X amount on a test score, right, and you raise it, more government funding comes to you. And this is statewide stuff, Cook County stuff, or where we are right now. And it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. All it does is just like, okay, well, we want money. Okay, let's say you're in the sandwich business, but you know what? You got to sell tires, right? Get out front and sell tires at Peppo's, you know. Shit. All right. So you get out there and you sell tires and you do everything, and your whole business model of, you know, Peppo's goes away because you got to fucking sell tires in order to make money, right? That's cool. And so I think the argument and the legislation and all these things that are they have to change. Otherwise, schools become extinct, right? I mean, you know, you have to understand, you know, how can we create a community to grow economically and pay people within a smaller community, right? This is what the southern part of the state gets pissed off about Chicago. They're like, you have different needs. Stop trying to push this on everybody, which is fine. Like, each community has different needs. So the model that I always look at is, look, I'm not like, I love math. I love science. I love history. I really love history, by the way. You know, in English and writing and culture and all these different things. You see that every day, right in your backyard, right?
Yep.
So how can we help our students become part of the community in experiential learning and get credit, whatever credit is, and help that community grow, right? Why is it that, Robert, you've got to take this test, and if you get this on this SAT or whatever it is, and then, okay, good, now you can go off to, I don't know, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin. That's not in our community, number one. That money's going up there, and who knows where it goes. Why are we not, like, you know, helping communities build through their schools? Our kids can do it. You hire high school kids. You can see them do it. And I just think there's a place. Would it be hard? Everybody's like, yeah, man, that's going to be hard. By the way, it's Dr. Nolting. It just came to my head. He's a great dude. You know, is it hard? Is it going to be difficult to do? Yeah. We don't do a lot of things at school because it's hard. It would be hard to do. I'm like, fuck.
That's literally life in pushing any limit, getting to any next step.
Right.
There would be no Tesla, right? If it wasn't, if Elon was like, well, this is hard, I'm not going to do it. The fuck?
Right.
You know, he had to.
Right.
And here we are.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and Tesla's, you know, EVs, they got their problems, you know. I'm working with, I work with Spikeview, right? And I want to give a huge shout out to Spikeview because it's a student privacy first. They build their portfolios, right? Why are we not having, you got a GPA, you got a test score, you get a certificate, you know, when you walk out. Okay, everybody does. Great. Where's the individual part of that, right? And by the way, you're a math teacher, I'm a math teacher, and we're going to grade this kid differently. So how is that even, you know, where I talk about? So where is the student owning it? And that's where, you know, I've been trying to create portfolios for students.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I've done a Weebly, Wix, and all these other places, but the problem is it's like fucking wide out. You know, everybody's contacting your students and trying to, you know, sell them something or whatever. So I met Ekta Sahasi through a large network, and she has put this thing together where it's basically the students are logging their learning journey. It's spreading like wildfire. It's crazy awesome. But again, going back to the EV story, she's got 2 EVs. She lives in Palo Alto, right, or around San Fran. Well, they just had that huge storm.
Yep.
They're fine. They just don't have electricity. So they're trying to figure out. They got one car stuck in the garage, yo. Like, how do we can't even, do anything. And, we actually, this is the hustle though. This is what I love about entrepreneurs. Like we're having a meeting before as I was driving here. And she's in a car and she's got it plugged in somewhere to plug in somewhere else to have a meeting. Like we're having a meeting with a couple of our, people. And I'm just like, these are the people like who inspire me. Yeah. Like, and I want to inspire students to do that. Yep. So yeah, I mean, so that's, that to me, going all the way back to learning with students, learning with what's going on. It's just like, dude, if your clients hate this type of cheese, you are never, ever order that fucking cheese. Right,
simple.
It's simple, yeah. Right?
The cool thing is I get to play it now because I'm not in this huge system, right? Yeah. Or following someone else's rule sets, the perks of being the boss, I guess.
Sure.
I follow the rule sets of the, standards of our industry and health department, all that. But I can really do a lot of creative shit tomorrow if I decided. Right. Mm-hmm. Instantly apply it and get a better result. Yeah. Yeah. That's literally what I do.
Right. Right.
And I think the point of the teacher learning and having someone like you who can just at least push that and think outside the box is, I wrote this in my notes. Having a teacher like you, it's just the mindset. And I had a few good teachers. We spoke about that on your podcast. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But if I had someone or even a business class like you, I think I quite literally would have sped up or saved 5 to 10 years of my journey, fucking it up, figuring it out the hard way, having to find a mentor, anybody it was only just a different way to think. Yeah. It wasn't even that complex. I wasn't, getting some special skill.
Sure.
It was just me connecting with someone that made me think, oh, it makes sense now. Literally. Yeah. Right. And this is the importance of the teacher understanding the student and bringing in different ideas and working it from a different angle, and understanding that people learn differently. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah. And that's why I love jumping into your, curriculum and building that thing. And
yeah, I mean, we're building together. I mean, that's exactly what, as we're building these things I'll tell you, Robert, the hardest thing to do is to get kids to believe in themselves. Right. So, you're going back to mentorship and everything. And I know your history with, Peppos and everything like that. And your dad right now is like, what the fuck? I told you all this stuff, right? Like, but it just doesn't work that way, right? Like I can't, it's like they call it like the Little League coaching syndrome, right? Like if I'm your dad and I can tell you how to swing the bat, you're not going to listen to me anyway, right? Because you're trying to, and that's just the way families are, right? So then how do you get these other pieces in there? These other people to mentor. Now, here's the challenge with that is as an educator, kids are so pissed off at school when they walk into my box for 45 minutes, they're like, fuck it. I have to be here. Yeah. So one of my biggest challenges, and the challenges for all the educators who are doing some amazing things, is to get kids to believe that they can do some crazy, awesome shit in that classroom. Even though it's the worst place in the world for a lot of those kids to be. Like, if I could bring kids to your restaurant for a week straight, watch them, go ahead. They should work for you for free, take notes, figure things out. Not only would they learn a shit ton of business, they could probably help you with 2 or 3 processes to make it more,
For sure.
And so that's what I'm talking about. Like, why are we not doing this in our own community? Yeah. I don't care if they're at Walgreens. I don't care if they're at Peppo's. I don't care if they're at the gas station or whatever.
Really, though, why not?
Yeah, why not?
How do you get them excited to be there? How do we just change the dynamic of, I'm not forced to do this. Maybe I want to do this. Oh, I can't wait for this class today.
Yeah, right.
How do we do, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Maybe we will find it.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I think we will find it.
Yeah, no. Because you find it with some. I mean, and some kids just... there was an old, we kind of make a joke of it. There was an old financial literacy Oprah. It was a whole series, and it did a great job, and we still probably have the DVDs somewhere. And this was like back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was a series, and it taught people how to actually manage money, and it was a great way to do it. But there was this young lady named Kiki on there, right? And Kiki just didn't she was like, I'm going to spend all my money on this shit, and then I'm going to spend some more, right? And she didn't come out and say it, but that was her actions. And she was, in her head, she was talking about, well, I deserve this. And I don't want to judge, but there's one thing that Oprah said. It's like, Kiki's not ready yet. And we get a lot of students who are Kikis. They're just not ready yet. So that's why we're going earlier in life. Like we're trying to, even with the Spike View thing that we're working with, like we're looking, dude, there's kindergarten, first graders who are starting to log their own learning journeys.
Wow. Right.
There's a lot of neuroscience and everything like that, which, by the way, going back to Ken Wallace, like you get all these administration and anybody in academia they go get a doctorate, right? Which is great. I mean, it's not easy. His is a neuroscience. Like he's like, fuck, I want to know how my kids think, right? And it's a big difference. And he's been on my podcast. He's been on a 1,000 other podcasts. But hearing him think about the brain is actually wired to say, fuck off. I don't want to learn anything today. It's especially as our frontal lobe, comes out. That's why kids like go crazy in their cars and stuff like that, or they smoke dope or whatever they're doing, right? Smoked up. I sound like I was like 90.
I mean, it's true though, but so, yeah.
But like,
still true.
But like, why are they doing stupid things, not thinking? Because it's actually neuroscience will tell you that's exactly how everybody's designed. So the trick is to try to figure out, okay, how do I get that lightning bolt in your head and your neurons to actually fire and do something that is going to affect you positively in your life for the rest of your life. And it could be, I think about like Mr. Bigley, who was my 6th grade science teacher. Day one, the dude lit something up front, and I was like, holy shit, I'm paying attention, right? Like, and that was it.
They need some stimuli.
Yeah.
It needs just something different.
Kids sit, though, and this is a challenge. They sit in a class. Think about it, right? My son just sat, when we sat down and talked to him about where he's going to go next year. He's a senior. He's like, I don't know, I've been in education for 12 years. Just let that sink in. The kid's 17 years old. Like 12 years of your life, you're in this extremely structured, but there is zero transition outside of here's your diploma, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Hopefully you go to college because we need that money. Yeah. Like that's, I mean, let's be honest, that's what it is. So how can we better transition students? We got a great like internship program and things like that we're working on, but they're still like, I have to be here. I'm like, you got to change that have to get. Like you get to be here, dude. Yeah. Like there are girls in Afghanistan right now who had just got turned off, and you know this, you were there. Like you can't learn anymore. Get the hell out of schools. Right. Yeah. Like, so there's your gamut. So, I mean, that's the old, like my parents were like, oh, there's people starving in the world, but it's true.
It's true as fuck. Yeah.
It's true. And so how do we make them understand or help them understand you do what you want to do, but let me help you get there. Yeah. Right. That's easier in a business class than it is in a calculus class. I get that. But you know what? Like we've got to go through things. Like I referenced to you before the podcast Stutz, right? And I'm going to ruin it a little bit, but Dr. Phil Stutz said, there's only 3 things in life that are facts: pain, uncertainty, and constant work. And as soon as you can get that shit in your head, and I'm sitting here, I watch this with if you guys have kids, I would watch it with your kids. Obviously, probably 13 and up, if you're worried about language or whatever. But I was like, he was like, if you get that in your head, if you understand that, and you're still willing to build and to grow, you have figured out the meaning of life. And I'm like, I mean, I wanted to like yell this at my kid yesterday. We actually watched it last night before we were doing this podcast.
I guess I'm gonna watch it tonight.
And I was just like, I just like, did you hear that? But again, I'm his dad, right? Yeah. So but at least I'm exposing him to it. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, does the school system suck? Yeah. Did I fight it a lot? Yeah. Was I angry in it? Did I piss people off? Yeah. Did I move around jobs because of it? Yes. But I would never regret any of it, right? Because I feel like I'm moving forward, and I'm helping others move forward, and they're helping me move forward. Yeah. So, yeah, that's disrupt education, man. Yeah. Is that the first question?
I think that was the first one. Fucking right. Yeah. So, okay. So with that, and then disrupt education, actually the podcast, you've had a ton of guests on, right? So you're obviously trying to get the people who are pushing, who are in the education space, who are thinking outside the box together, right? Have you seen that, so you growing through the podcast, bringing these people around, have you seen that be quite helpful to get information out there, collaboration?
Yeah, 100%.
Is that the point of it?
Yeah,
in your
it
opinion?
wasn't. I mean, at the beginning of it, it was just like, I just want to hear students. I just want to hear youth. I want them, like, in school or right out of school, just tell me what are we screwing up? Like, what can we do better?
You know what? It's great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Go
You
ahead.
just reminded me of something.
Yeah.
So getting the student right out of graduation, letting them tell you the truth now.
Absolutely.
Tell me what is.
Yeah, because they don't. They do
Excellent
great.
feedback.
Yeah, right. 100%.
The Army does the same thing, and
Yeah.
it's what they get right at the end of basic training. You've graduated. You're allowed to tell them anything. Now
Right.
you tell them a pretty good amount of what you got away with.
Right.
And we did that, and then they learned better for the next course.
Right.
What was good? What was bad? What can we improve?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
What did you get away with? Whatever. You know.
But you know what? Like, and going back to the Army, like I didn't serve. Both my grandparents did. I had a few uncles and few cousins. But you also have to understand, we're still flying 58-year-old C-17s. You know why? You know, that's the politics. It's just the way it is. I can get pissed off because, you know, as the vice president was just in Chicago the other day, and I'm a huge aircraft geek. Like, I love aircraft. And of course, we're watching a stream at Midway, and here comes a C-17 flying in and all that fog like 3 nights ago. And I'm like, what the fuck is that doing there? You know? And then, you know, I learned, because in the chat, somebody's like, yo, this is why it's there and everything. And I'm like, and then I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, God, we're like United States of America. Why are we flying around? I mean, you probably, especially in the National Guard, you probably got the shit of the shit when it came to equipment, right? You had to make
overseas,
do.
everybody gets the best stuff.
Yeah, but
But here, you're dealing with dated things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, it is. But my point is, it's part of the game, right? It took me a long time to get that into my head. And there are still a lot of people in my network that are just angry as hell about education. And you can be angry. You have a right to be pissed off about it. But, you know, there comes a point where you're like, all right, let's do something. You know, let's do something. When the pain of not doing something is greater than the pain of doing something, you got to do something, right? So I felt like at that moment, coming back off of that trip we did overseas, I needed to do something. I have always been like a person like where you go to, like we went to conventions in Vegas and all these things prior to this, education things. You're like, all right, that's cool. All right, that's cool. I may take one or two things from this. At the end of this one, the EF tour, there was in the back of the book, and I still have the book, where you actually sign a contract. And it's so cheesy to me. I'm like, come on, this is such bullshit, like whatever. I signed that contract. And that's why I did it. Like, I was like, all right, and I somehow held myself accountable to it. So, you know, going through guests and stuff, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, I've worked with a lot of ed tech companies. A lot of conversations have come from this. Actually, the way I met the founder of SpikeView was through and you work with this program at Prospect. It's the incubator program, which is an amazing program. I know the people who started that up. A person who is a great friend of mine now was in that first rendition of that out of Barrington High School. He's the one who connected me to Hostrawser, right?
That's why we got to keep doing these things.
100%. Like you, so I mean, it's funny because just like anything, you try anybody walk in your store or whatever, they want to get you, they want to take the most out of you. They don't want to give a shit. I mean, I've got people, and maybe some of them are good, some of them are not, but they're like, yo, I got the best thing in education, and I'm just like, oh man, like I can see right. You can see right through people trying to sell educators and people who really want to make a difference.
For sure.
And I now have the luxury of picking people I want to work with who really want to make a difference.
Yep.
And even in the ed tech world, and that, again, I mean, you know, I know I'm spilling SpikeView out there a lot, but I know this owner, I know what we're doing, and I know we're doing it for the right reasons.
Yep.
And I've seen people who want the Ferrari in 2 weeks, you know, they're like, all right. And I wouldn't help any of my business students or any students in any subject if I would jump and do that, because basically, number one, I'm not going to get the Ferrari in 2 weeks. And number two, I'm teaching them to go for the Ferrari in 2 weeks.
Yep. There's no shortcut.
No.
There's not. I promise you, I've looked in every area, asked every person, what's the key? There's no secret. There's no key. It's hard work, consistency, dealing with the pain, and the other things that the Stutz had alluded to.
Uncertainty. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you have to live in that space and be able to thrive in it.
Yeah.
Now you get the big result.
That's what he says is meaning of life. And I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. You're right on. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you guys have crushed it on the podcast. Just hit tons of downloads, which you posted last year. You know, I love seeing that. And, you know, I just had a guest on last week. You on now. My whole thing is that now I've put a lot out myself.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's what I'm involved in. It's what I like, and I could just throw down. But now it's the connecting. I want to build some shit. It's the same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
I want to build this thing. We talked off camera about it, into where that will evolve into. But we have to keep pushing this and doing these things and getting the word out there and letting people know that there's some doers out there.
Yeah.
And even the young kids listening, the students, somebody's coming up that's going to be part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's inspire them and have them join us.
I mean, right now, the barriers to entry are the lowest they have ever been
for sure
in the entire history of man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's the thing. Now that we know that those tools are out there, now that we know that education is basically dead. People are going to be like, what the fuck is he saying? Knowledge is dead.
Go to Google.
Yeah, knowledge is dead. It's now how can we start to help each other? Like, how can we start to build these programs and places and things where people can basically empathize with people, help people grow and fulfill in their lives. And this has been a long time coming, and I know there's a lot of educators even before me. Like, if anybody wants to see it, I'm not sure if you've seen it. Like Sir Ken Robinson. His TED Talk, which is one of the things that actually inspired me. When I saw that, I still think it's the most watched TED Talk out there.
I've seen so many TED Talks, I don't remember.
Right. He's the one who talked about education, and to see him live before he passed away, it was insane. Like, basically how schools kill creativity. And that led to me reading pretty much every single book that he has, and then also other books. You mentioned that on your podcast, or on my podcast about reading books, and isn't that crazy though? Like, you think about it, like when we were in school, I was like, "Fuck books, man." That's
I didn't read a single one.
Like I did.
You may have done a little better than I did.
I don't know. I had to. My dad was my own football coach.
Yeah,
he would kick my ass, but and like luck has some things to do with it, right? Like, let's go back to that. Like, I graduated with 97 kids, right? And we lived basically across the street from the high school. I missed one day of high school. And I tell my kids this, my students this, and they're like, "Are you fucking crazy?" I'm like, it would hurt a lot more if I skipped. Like, and look, I get like COVID, and we know a lot more about mental health and all that, so I don't want to discount that. But what the one day I missed was my senior year. And this is going to be like walking up to school uphill in snow
every
story,
day,
but,
both ways.
But I got to tell it because I missed it was December finals of my senior year, and it was the last day of finals. I remember I have a chemistry final. Ms. Parker, just a killer chemistry teacher. I hated chemistry, but she was a great teacher. And I got up to go to school, and I passed out in the hallway. And my mom still wasn't sure, right? Like, she was like, you better go. And I had like 103 degree temperature, dude. Like, I literally tried to go to school that day. And because it would hurt more to redo all the, I had to redo the final and all that shit. I just didn't want to do that. There's a lot of fear of missing out as well that was instilled in me. And I remember in May, they used to do perfect attendance awards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you get a year, great, you get an award. You get 2 years, great. 3 years, okay, great. 4 years was the shit. Like, it was like, an Oscar, for an actor. And they didn't give it to me. And I was just like, in this day and age, that would change, right? I get that. I fully agree with that. But these are like the formulating things in my life to really say, okay, and you'll see this on stuff when anybody else watches it. It's like, if you chase fairness, you're wasting fucking time. And I was like, wow. Like, and I think we all have chased fairness
For sure.
for a long time. And, you know, and I think these were the pieces that in my life that you look back on, and because we're older, we can look back on it. If I can get a younger person to realize their look backing on and where their own stories and the strengths and opportunities that come through those, even if it's BS, right? Like, even like you think about this one kid, and I think about him often. His brother was murdered the day before, like, and he comes to school, right? Like, he was on the news that night.
Fucking wild.
Right? And I'm like, I mean, number one, there's no way I can understand that.
Yeah.
Like, no way. And I ain't even going to try. I can't go, man, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I'm not even going to go up to that kid and say that, because that's just basically a slap in his own face. What I did do, though, is I was like, for the rest of the semester, hey, I'm here for you. Whatever you need.
Yep.
Just, you know. But to have that young man understand the power that he went through, even though it was the shittiest thing that could probably happen to anybody in their lives, I mean, he's there.
If you can do that,
Yeah.
What can we harness that and
how can we continue to apply and help others and create better lives for people?
Yeah, just find those little victories.
Yeah.
You know, find the silver lining in some of the shit. And that's what I had to do, and that's helped. And now my goal is to do that with everybody.
Right.
Because there's tons of power in that.
Yeah.
You know, finding your own value, your own strength. I think the end of your email says, my value is helping other people find their value.
Yeah, yeah. 100%.
Fucking love it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what, I mean, that came from another colleague of mine. We tried to start a business. Well, we did start a business for a while, and it got derailed by COVID. It was called Hall Pass Education, which is kind of funny. You say Hall Pass. Everybody be like, maybe we got the name wrong, but it was two colleagues. Both of them were college professors, but also like life coaches, marketing gurus, or whatever. And one of my colleagues, she was like, I'll give her a shout out. Her name is Audrey Boyle. And a previous student, my first guest on Disrupt Education, connected us. So that's the shit. Like, you just look back through this and you could just see it's all interwoven. But she was like, you know, what you need to do is and she was helping me with my LinkedIn at the time. She's like, you need to just come up with one line of who you are. That's hard.
Sure, it is.
That's hard. That took me a long time. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I basically, created that. And I'm like,
well, it's the anchoring value thing, right?
100%.
You use that and you could build, you off of it.
Right. So that's the value I bring. It's funny because, that you think about, I mean, and I want like everybody listening to the podcast to just take a moment and think about like, holy shit, like we all have our parents or, people who are in our immediate family or love us or whatever. But think about those moments that were defining that you don't think about, right? I had an actor in my class, and I don't want to get sued, so I don't want to say his name, but he's in feature films. He was on a lot of comedic stuff. On TV, on YouTube, and different things like that. I would say, middle range actor. And he helped me with like Disrupt Education and such. And, if you want to see him, he's on the intro of the early ones. So you guys can go find that. But he said, and this is where the consistency comes in. If you get to, I was like, I need you, man. I want you to be a guest, man, because you're just going to blow up my, sure. I wanted the Ferrari, right? I was like, give me the Ferrari, dude. And he's like, you get to 100 and I'll be a guest, right? And I got to 100 and I didn't even ask. Like, I was like, lesson learned. Like, and he's never been on my podcast, by the way. But that's like a moment, at that moment, like when he's like 100, I was like, I wasn't like, fuck you, man. I was just like, all right, I got to get to 100.
Yeah.
And what he really taught me, and by the way, he was like 22 at the time, and I'm like 43, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I was just like, all right, well, fuck it, I'll do it. And I remember, like, it always comes up if I hit like every 50 or whatever, right? I'm at 260 or 270 now. But that consistency is so key because there's so much to learn in consistency.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
You can't skip this part.
Right. And, that's the thing. Like, that's the hardest part about watching somebody in the system get comfortable playing the system the same way. I did it. Like, dude, I got like a 3.2 or 3.3 in high school. I didn't do shit. I just knew how to play the game, but I did the same thing over and over and over again. And it sucks. And if I could if I could go back, and that's part of my own learning process, but if I could go back and change those trajectories, change, what are my skill sets? What can I do? And really start to identify those and log them somehow. Yep. And that's why we talked about right before the podcast. Yep. Everybody should be doing a podcast. You don't have to put it out there or, journalizing or whatever. My stuff's out there. Yeah, but it's out there, like my first one is out there. And I remember talking to my guests more than my guest was talking to me. And I was like, God damn, I was just trying to be a fucking hotshot, And I'm just like, oh my God, you look at it. But you know what? I keep it out there because you need to know your journey and people need to know your journey.
For sure.
But more importantly, you need to know your journey. And that's why I want kids to take risks every day, man. So
absolutely. Love it. All right. We're
question 2.
Hour 20 in. We're doing good.
Okay,
no. So I had a quick fire round that I've not done with anybody. You can answer them as in depth or as quick as you want. Some of them are
fast. I like to do these.
Okay. Politics in the classroom.
I take a Switzerland approach, like neutral. I do have my own politics. And if anybody wants to know, you can email me. But like in the classroom, I ask questions of why you think that way. That's it. I unfortunately I've seen people try to be right in the classroom, and I don't mean right wing or whatever. I mean like correct in the classroom, the way that they see the world, and I mean like educators or even students. Again, it goes back to Stutz, man. He's like, you can either try to be right or you can try to grow.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that, it doesn't really matter where you land in politics. If you can back it up and according to your own journey and really understand and help others, really help others, and go ahead.
What I think, and I won't speak on this much, but
okay.
I think if someone has their view and I have a different view, that's okay.
100%.
When did that go away? Right.
Well, that's a very easy answer. Is that another short question? Social media.
Sure. Yeah.
Everybody, you look at the way that social media blows up and goes viral. It's conflict, 100%. Right.
Yeah.
If you're on a skateboard, the guy falls over and racks his nuts. Conflict.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Clickbait.
Or 100%.
Yeah.
And it stirs up something within us. And I'm not. We're all susceptible to this. I've seen things even this morning. Checking LinkedIn, I'm like, and you really want to say something because you're like, no, you're wrong. I don't know that person.
Exactly.
So in the classroom, I don't know where they were. Maybe there was something politically that, helped them out. Maybe it hurt them. I don't know. So am I willing to go deep into that with them at that moment? Not in front of a class. It's personal.
Yeah.
So
cool. Now this one may be different from a public school perspective, but we both have a Catholic Christian background.
Yep.
But we'll ask it anyway.
Sure.
Religion in the classroom.
Yeah. I give people the freedom to do what they do religiously without interrupting anybody else. Period.
Yeah.
I've as you know, like where we are right now there's a very large Muslim population. Yep. I've had kids ask me, can I go, do one of my 5 prayers? Yeah, go ahead. How can I accommodate you?
Yeah.
But it doesn't interrupt, right? So like if my religion, I had a great professor at Bethel College originally, and he was a psychology class, and he had a theory of the slap. It was the best thing. It's like this, look, if what I believe is always right, then I can slap you. Right? Like And then you probably shouldn't feel pain because it's what I believe.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like if the action is hurting somebody else, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep it at that. And I'm like, holy shit, mind blown, man.
Yeah.
This guy like studied in Asia, like he did, he was like a black belt, and he did, But you would look at this dude, and you're like, typically, stereotypically, you're like, oh, all right, this guy is. I'd probably take him, right? But no. So the theory of the slap, that's it. Yeah. Like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Don't let me get in the way of you and your God, because unless your God is trying to kill me or to do something, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
My journey of spirituality, religion, whatever it was very much ingrained from an early age. And then I went really far the other way, trying to figure out why that was. Why are these things the way they are? When I started coming to myself, that pushed me down to study it all. Yeah. And I went really far down there. And so it's an interesting question that I'm very neutral on because I've studied all these things, and a lot of them are so similar, more similar than they are 100%, different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I prayed in the classroom, like not in front of kids. Like they don't know, like Robert's in front, like fucking around. I'm just like, God, give me that, I do, but it's not like I'm like, okay, everybody, I'm going to halt your education or whatever. So yeah.
All right. Chat GPT.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It is a definer. I think we're in a very interesting place. And I think I tweeted this out where if something is hugely game changing, people hold up and take sides really quickly. And that's exactly what's happening. So this is a game changer.
It looks like that.
It will. There will be people who will get on board, and then there will be people who won't. We already screwed up with phones, bro. Like, we never taught kids how to actually, and I think that's why we have a mental health crisis. It's not that it's all on the schools. When I say we as a society have really kind of fudged that a little bit. But we need to have some more honest conversations about that. If you ever want to like go into something like that, like there's a great book called Indistractable by Nerial. He basically talks about, how you control your phone, Well, that should be an entire class, right? So this,
I actually talked about that at my speech at Sandberg.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if that's what the book is about.
Yeah.
But it's you control the things around you.
Exactly.
And you should do that as like a practice.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. What can you, like, control what you can control, let go of what you can't, right? Like, there are some that are school systems that are trying to control this. You will not be able to control it.
Fucking way.
I mean, you have to, the goods and the bads with anything, right? Like, you've got to understand this is the next wave. This is not like, any like older, like crappy, Facebook or anything like that that's going to go away, and which is still around. I was trying to say MySpace, right? Yeah. This is not that. Like, this is actually going to evolve, and we can either think about it, right? Like, you do not see this. I'm going to hide this from you. What are you going to do as a curious learner? You're going to break every freaking rule, just like we did in college. So, I think, there's got to be a little more conversation about it. New York, I think it's the city schools have blocked it.
Just post that.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, well, you took your side, right? I mean, I can get angry about it, but I feel bad for your teachers and learners because guess what you just did? You're just going to move a shit ton of people out of New York, like of those schools. And now, you're probably going to have some great educators, some great students there that are going to be like, just lost.
Why do you think maybe the education system, or traditional anyway, doesn't want to use tools that are becoming prevalent? They just don't know about it. They don't know what to do with it.
Fear of losing jobs. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, people... Look, there's still people, and you're in the food business, so I'm going to use this as an example. There are still people who work at McDonald's even though they have kiosks.
Yeah.
Right? You just change. Guess what? Learn to fix the kiosk.
Yeah.
Now you got yourself, and the thing is like, traditional education, unfortunately, my dad taught at the same school for 33 years, right? Not every, he taught me a lot about, how, this kid isn't going to use algebra. So I'll work with them. I'll pass that kid whatever they need to do, but I'm going to have a conversation and say, okay, this is how can I help you also? And that's a math teacher, right? We have a lot of those. I mean, even in the district.
I would be
work
very
with.
thankful for that.
Yeah. But there are teachers or there are educators out there that get into this game, unfortunately burn out, because I think everybody goes into it with an open heart and really wanting to help, because the system beats you down and they allow things that they can't control them, and they just cash it in for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And then if anything's going to fuck up my little world here, stay out. I'm going to shut my door, stay out, right? But, I mean, you could do that with a kid back in the day. Let's go back into the 70s and 80s, right? You go back to the movies and stuff. Like, yeah, you're out of my class and you're never coming back happened, right? You can't do that with technology.
Yeah.
It is in your class.
Yep.
And so how can we work with it rather than against it? And I think because we haven't worked with it in the right ways, it has become an overwhelming where our kids are way too much on the screen. We've lost the human side of things. They always talk about this pendulum. It's coming back. I know you're supposed to be short fire questions. That's a big one. But I think that, the way that I really, and frankly, I don't know what my district's stance is on this, but I'm not waiting for them. I mean, whatever. I've created some of the work that we're doing together. That lesson plan was partially created on this.
Awesome.
So yeah, I can create a lesson plan, and then, all right, no lesson plan or AI unless they're in that class working with all your students. It's going to know your students, right? Yet. And I always say yet because that's where it gets crazy. But, yeah, so like I could build a lesson plan and really say, okay, this gives me clarity. I have an idea, but then how do I do this? I mean, if you think about it, like business uses teams of people, but we're siloed off a lot in education. I mean, we meet with our departments once a week at the most, the absolute most. I mean, think about that. Like we should be working and collaborating. So with AI, I think we should be using it with students. Like, you guys tell me, how can we use this? Because it actually learns from the right input. So you have to put input, right? I think we're also, worried about the kid. He's going to say, well, write a story about a turd, whatever. This shit's going to happen. Yeah. Pun intended. But like it's like it really and that's fine, right? Maybe that kid will become a proctologist. I don't know, what the hell, let's talk. It's all about how you approach it and how you conversate about it, and you make everybody feel safe in a space. And that's the reason why schools block it. They don't feel safe, and they're not safe learning environments, in my opinion, right?
So can you like volunteer yourself to be like the one who tests it outside of the classroom first? It says, this is what I've come up with.
Yeah, I'm already doing it. And by the way, here's the funny thing is testing companies that were paying billions of dollars to bring in our own tax money have been using AI for fucking ever. Right. So it's like, and somebody, that's not mine. Like somebody posted that on LinkedIn. I don't know who it was, but I'm like, holy shit, you're right. Yeah. Like, think about it. Like you go through a job interview. Like, how do you think they know how to pick your fucking resume if you're going for like United Airlines, right?
Right.
AI. Mm-hmm. How do you think like colleges pick you? AI, right? They don't have somebody. Can you imagine? Like they might have done this, but like you're at U of I and you're the person who has got to look through 500,000 applicants. That doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. We're using it already. Yeah. So might as well teach the kids about it, right? Yeah. So
I like it.
Yeah.
How should a student treat failing a class? How should they look at it?
I'll be honest. In high school, you have got to try to fail, in my opinion. Like actually fail a class. My class, anyway. Like if you half-ass it, you'll get a C. I mean, you can just turn the shit in, whatever, right? I had two students. Who knows if I'll get in trouble for this, but they were at the last semester. We were doing our business model canvas pitches, right? And I think you were part of a Shark Tank for another class. We didn't do the Shark Tank for another school in our district, and thank you for that. That's awesome. But we had our students actually just kind of, tell us they were pitching the class that we didn't have a panel of people up there, and these two kids were putting it together on the final day. And these kids are on their phones the whole time, and I'm going to try. All the way up until that last bell rings, I'm gonna try to help you. But at the end of the day, horse, water, we can do that. So these two guys are like, okay, so Mr. H, and literally like 10 minutes, 20 minutes into the final day, right? And we're done. And by the way, I'll go back to that in a moment. There's a reason why I finished these before the final exam, day, is because I'm like, I want to get their feedback. So the same thing as exiting, the military or exit interviews. I give my students exit interviews. But anyway, these two kids are, these two yahoos were like, they're, okay, so wait, what do we do here? I'm like, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to finish this. I'm going to give you a C on it. Right now, what you're doing is you're learning a consequence for you not managing your time and not really listening. I am mad, but I will not let you come up and basically disrespect this whole class by trying to do what you're trying to do.
In 10 minutes, whatever.
I'll give it. You guys will pass. Don't worry about it. And they got like D's or whatever in class. No argument, right? So yeah, to me, like that's, I don't know that. But going back to that last day, that's when I asked, like, what can I do better?
Yeah.
Like, I know I screwed things up. I know some days you guys are sleeping on me because I was boring or I talked too much or whatever I did. Help me out, right? It was kind of a disrupt education within
perfect
way, but you have to, right?
So that you kind of hit the next one. So the first one was how should a student treat failing class, and then the second one was going to be how should a teacher treat a student who failed. So you kind of answer them both in the same. I'll put a spin on it now for a perspective. I'll take me in math.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't good at it, but that didn't mean I'm not good at school.
Right.
That didn't mean I wasn't smart or couldn't apply. So the way that I would have liked to see it is, no one told me shit. I just maybe I got a D. But I didn't say, oh, you know what? We'll find something you're good at. Or next year, I'm going to help you more. It was like like radio silence. There was nothing.
Right.
And I was just like, so that's it? Like I kind of passed. Like,
right.
Should I do better? Should I try to get better math? What now? There was nothing.
Right.
And I felt like, so you doing what in the Army we call it after action report.
Yeah.
What we talk about, there was none of that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I didn't know how to feel or treat it. Right. And I see now that you bring a different perspective to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easier in business classes, I'll be honest. Like, because business is business. Look, either somebody's going to buy your shit or they're not. Like, that's it. Like, whether it's a product or service, people are going to come in and buy it or people aren't. And guess what? You can learn a lot from both. You can learn from somebody who's going to buy your stuff. You can learn a lot from people who aren't buying your stuff. And, it is what it is. If everything, like, I think the problem with education is we're so still, unfortunately, in the factory mode of it. And, let's go to algebra, right? And I just had this conversation with somebody else yesterday. I can't remember who it was, but if you're asking a kid, okay, they're like, I'm bad at math, which I don't think you're bad at math. You would fail your business if you were bad at math.
Sure, that's true.
So it's just certain types of concepts that you can't.
That's right.
So
thank you for articulating that.
But I think that's what we need to tell students, right? Like we get this in our head. Like I think I'm bad at chemistry. I'm not bad at chemistry. I mean, I can cook, so, all right. But when you talk to a student, they're like, yeah, I can't do math. I'm like, what class you in? Like algebra, it sucks or whatever. I'm like, all right, well, how about I give you two $1 bills, you give me a $5 bill? And they're like, fuck you, man. I'm like, why? Well, that's worth more. I'm like, you just did algebra. You're just not like, you're not grasping it. Yeah. Because you put a dollar sign around something, people learn real quick. So there has to be a meaning for anybody going into doing anything.
For sure.
Right? And if that meaning is check the box and go to the next level, then they're probably not going to learn anything. That's why I didn't learn anything, and I don't blame anybody. That's just the way it is, right? Until like I really started to learn business was when rent was due. Like, oh shit, this hurts, right? This is why when you see a lot of people who are tremendously successful, they've went through some amazing crap. Some big shitty thing happened in their life. Or they can pull it out of smaller things and put it together, and they have that ability. I've had the opportunity to teach professional athletes, Olympians, major, millionaires, whatever. And there is something that's different, and that's it. They can make anything meaningful for them at any time. And then they just go.
Yep.
So I always like to tell this story, and I hope Shannon Brown has heard this story because he actually taught me something. It was the first athlete that I remember. I had him in accounting in Proviso East. He was Mr. Basketball. D. Brown had just graduated, and Shannon Brown was in my class, and I remember like having him in class, and I just came from Indiana. I'm like, I don't know this kid from anywhere. The Chicago basketball scene is kind of its own, and we were taking a test in accounting. They were kind of going through the accounting process, and Illinois, the Basketball Hoops magazine was there, and they were going to do a photo shoot for the cover of Hoops magazine. And here's this kid, 18 years old, sitting in my class, 6'2". He wasn't that big. I mean, he grew a little bit more, right up front. And they came over the announcement, and they were like, "Hello, Mr. Hostrawser. Can you please send Shannon Brown to the field house? We would like to take a picture. The Hoops people here." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And it's like, Shannon's like, "All right, I'll go after I take the test." I was like, "The fuck is this? Serious?
Wow.
Like, this is an accounting test, you know? Like, all right, whatever." And then 2 minutes later, they came on it again, and they're like, "Yeah, Mr. H, we were just wondering, did you send Shannon Brown down?" And Shannon went like this. He's like, "Hey, I will be down there after I finish this test. Y'all can wait." And that's when I knew. I'm like, this kid's going to he's going to the show.
Yeah.
Like, that's the mentality. Like, he wasn't an accountant. He wasn't going to be an accountant, but he knew everything that he had control of. He was going to kick ass on it. Every night the kid shot, no lie, and I know you hear all these stories. He shot 1,000 free throws every fucking night in the gym. He'd be in there for hours after practice in the springtime, in the fall. And he taught me really what that caliber of thought process is. And I really did ingest that into trying to do the best that I can as I teach. Yeah. So, you see it with everybody. I've had kids in class who they have talent, right? Whatever it is. Usually athletes come to mind because I was from an athletic family as well. And you just know. They're like, "Yeah, I'm going to go." And I'm like, you might be D2 maybe for a year, and then you'll drop off. Like, and it's almost like, I'm playing yesterday's lottery. Yeah. I mean, it's because you can see it. And also, though, the best part is when you see, like a kid like Luke Gaughan, right? Like, his humbleness, like, you hear his lyrics, and this is a big shout-out for your listeners. Like, I mean, they're killer. I mean, this kid is just, and maybe it's not your type of music or whatever, but they are totally, like, his stories are real.
Yep.
And, his humbleness in class, they're two different people. Like, he knows his art. He knows what he's going for. You're talking about a kid who went to junior college, Triton, and did 2 years on a scholarship, because you get free, and then got the presidential scholarship to U of I and has an accounting degree because his mom said that's what you need to do before you can go and do whatever. Wow. And he did a yes and. So, like, that's the caliber. And it's okay if you're not willing to do that. Just don't expect those outcomes.
For sure. There's nothing,
there's nothing I can do, right? And you're going to have to hit a point where, and dude, I've totally fucked up in schools. Like, I've screwed up with administration. I've screwed up with students, with parents. Like, you have to hit those points. It's a fact of life.
Yep.
Because otherwise, you're going to be that teacher who's going to teach the same thing for 30 years.
Yep.
You're going to coach the same way for 30 years.
If you're not pushing it, you're not going to run into any roadblocks. You're not going to piss people off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cliche as hell, but it is absolutely true.
It's facts. 100%.
There's a long answer to that. Quick shot.
Love it. All right. Last one. Mm-hmm. What have you seen as key factors in either happiness or success or both post-school when your students get into a career, whether it was from good grades, work ethic, creativity, what are some things that the listener can take away that now with 20 years of experience, you've seen be a few key takeaways that will decide?
When they understand that they're at the place that they are and they are okay with it. I mean, that's it. Like, I mean, I don't care if somebody's like cleaning Joy Johns or, you know, the CEO of a company. If they understand that they're there and they don't need to race everybody else and they just need to figure out, okay, for themselves, this is where I'm at. What's the next small step? Everybody who gets that is happy. They're fulfilled. They're fulfilled in life. It's hard because I've seen kids get that right away after high school. I've seen kids get that in high school. But then I also have students who are struggling. I struggle with it, right? Like, I remember right out of college, everybody's, you know, jonesing to be the big dog. You know, I got my degree, you got your degree, high school, wherever you're coming out of. I remember the dumbest car purchase mistake that I ever did. And I rectified this because I kept the car forever. But I was out of college. I was bartending. And this is when I was over at the country club. And I was like, I got to play the game. Like, I got to look a certain for everybody else.
Yep.
And I traded in my Honda Prelude. I love that car. 5-speed. You know, it was a 1990 with about, I don't know, 59,000 miles on it, right? It was perfect. Great. Paid off everything, right? And this is when the BMW came out with a 318 Ti, which is a great car. It had the 1.8 liter. It was 1995. So for those who know cars, my son and I, we work on cars and stuff like that. So I had to get it. It was like marketed at $19,999. Now, this process was great because I met Bob Rousey, who is one of the most amazing individuals. He has passed. Car dealerships, car salesperson that I've ever met. I walk into his office, and he throws me the keys to his demo, which was a red 318 Ti with like 500 miles on it. And I am like 22 years old.
It's old.
Right? And I'm like, not only is this a kick-ass car, and I'm going to be driving around in a BMW, I'm going to look like I'm the shit, this guy just trusted me. Like, there's nobody, my dad wasn't there. Like, he was just like, go. And so I took this car, and I'm driving this thing, and I'm like, you know, you're looking at the steering wheel. It's the first thing, you know. And I'm like, oh, yeah, right, this is crazy. And I traded in my car, and I bought it, and I paid for it. And I regret that. I absolutely love the Prelude, but I was doing it. And by the way, I kept this car for 20 years. And I had like 190,000 miles on it, right? And I actually should have kept it for my son, and I traded it in on another. But anyway, so the point being is, like, you know, when you see something like that and you're doing something for somebody else, as soon as you figure out I'm doing things for myself or my close loved ones, which, you know, parents can fuck you over sometimes,
sure.
right? But you know that's however you want to look at that in a relationship, but when you realize I literally did that to show off. Yep. There's no doubt in I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be this or that. And there's nothing wrong with getting nice things. Don't get me wrong there, right? I've got a great Acura TLX now. I love the car. It's 2015 or whatever. But what I learned from that lesson was I was doing things and I had to pay for it. Yep. And now I look back and I think, okay, that had to happen. I would have never met Bob Rousey. By the way, he was the main salesperson for my parents for like 8 cars. That's how good this dude was. Like, it was amazing. Like the person who came in is like, you know, I got to sell this for Amazon, the DoorDash. That's the way he was. He was like, you're going to pay $23,000 for this car. That $19,000 is bullshit. That's how we get you in the door. I'm like, here's the keys. Go take it. And I'm like, so anyway, the people who are out there in the world, whether you're in school or out of school, once you realize that there are certain games you have to play, right? And I struggle with this. I think we all do. But then you realize that if you're doing this for you, and this is who you are and what you want, and you know your values, and you're ready and willing to accept the bullshit that comes along with life, you're fulfilled. So notice I never said anything about a 4.0 in there, a 1600 on an SAT, or a perfect score on an ACT, or a degree from Harvard, anything like that, right? I've met people like that. I have known, Robin Williams, man, like amazing.
Yep.
But, there's depression there. There's like somewhere along the line, I don't know anything about his own depression, but I have seen other parents who lived in multi-million-dollar mansions off themselves, right? I have seen this, and I've had kids, their kids in my class. And that's terrifying, because all I want to do from here on out is to help people understand your journey is your journey. You don't need to play the game of, my dad always said life is a game, but you don't need to play it according to everybody else's rules. Play it according to your rules and grow.
Yeah.
Now, can I do that with a 17-year-old or 14-year-old in class? Jesus, I don't know. Yeah, but there's not. I think for me to be fulfilled and to understand in my own life, that's what I do. That's what I do best. And the hardest part, seriously, Robert, is when kids don't get that. I mean, you just got to hope, somewhere along the way that they do.
Yep.
Right. And it may not be with you, and you have to be humble enough to say, yeah, teachers love their subject. We love what we teach. I mean, I was sitting across from a calculus teacher yesterday at the Stag girls basketball game. I work doing announcing and stuff. And she loves calculus. I mean, I have calculus is, I've never taken calculus. I don't really want to, but she loves it. And it's very hard for you to see something you love to do, and then somebody say, fuck that. Yeah. That sucks. Yep. And you're just like, all right, well, then what lessons can I teach you in this? Because we got to be here.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, to me, that's where I see most of the people fulfilled in life. And again, like I said, I got kids who, are, in tough situations socioeconomically that are fulfilled. Right. If you look at the documentary called Happiness, I don't know if you ever watched that, right?
Have.
Like you see the guy in, the slums of India, and he's happy as hell.
Yep.
Yeah, give a shit. Like that's fulfillment, right? So yeah, I see it with any. So when we start talking about the top athletes or the top earner or whatever, that's just a mindset, right? For them, and it works for them, right? There's nothing wrong with going through this life being, making a couple bucks here and there, making ends meet, and helping others. That to me is fulfillment. So that's how I see a student. And it's tough to see it. So it's hard to see. It's hard to wait. I'm not a patient person, but it's hard to wait. And then the other thing that I kind of wanted to add here is parents. When I became a parent, the hardest part is to actually not pushing what I want you to be. And that's where a lot of people get fucked up. I mean, be honest. I got kids right now who are like, their parents want them to be this and this only. And that kind of mess with the kid.
Absolutely.
You have to find that balance. Like, how can I support you? But if you can't make a decision, I'm going to have to really make a decision with you. And then we'll find out that path. But once you shove somebody down into a corner, that's dangerous. And education unfortunately has shoved a lot of people into a corner because saying this is the only way. I believe the school district I'm at is very good. The counselors are very good at understanding that that's not the only way. But we still got to play with this money coming in.
Sure.
We still got, So I think parents really. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I mean, I continue to go back to Luke Gahn. It's so funny because his mom was like, you got to get a degree before you mess around with any of this shit. I get it. All we want is people to be safe. We want our kids to be safe and happy.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's just one thing I wanted to throw in there because we get, especially in this day and age when change is coming rapidly, especially in the education system, to go with it, right? You because we all change in life, right? I mean, you know, my whole life changed when my son was born, my daughter was born, when I got married, when, you know, this job changed or whatever. So change is constant, uncertainty. So if you're not preparing your kids for that, and you're going to house them or helicopter them into a place, you're actually doing damage.
Yep.
So,
and I've seen that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You've probably seen it. I'm sure you've seen it a lot.
More than I want to.
Right.
And I don't have the right answers.
Yeah.
You know, but I get to see it from a whole bunch of perspectives, and they get to see it from theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to add that.
Right.
Add to it.
100%. Man.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, Peter, I appreciate it. We're almost 2 hours in now.
Wow.
So why don't you tell everybody where to find you?
Yeah.
Talk about the podcast, plug it. Go for it.
So the podcast is called Disrupt Education. It is a YouTube channel, and you can find it on Apple, Spotify, anywhere. I have a co-host, which is something that came about last year. Her name is Allie Privet. Here's the cool part about this. We've never met. I've never actually physically sat down and had a cup of coffee with her. She's an amazing educator as well. She brings a different view. She's from a different generation than I am. So that's kind of the diverse thought processes there. So yeah, Disrupt Education. If you just Google my name, Peter Hostrawser, Hostrawser. I'm pretty much everywhere. There's a peterhostrawser.com. I'm on LinkedIn, mostly on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram are my.
And I'll put those links in the description too.
Appreciate
for
that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, everybody, I appreciate you guys listening, rocking with us. Give him a follow, listen to his podcast, good stuff. And mine will be coming out like the end of this week or next week. So listen to that. Peter, again, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Stay tuned because we're going to be working, you know, if you're in the education business world, man, we're mapping it. So
let's get it. Excited for it. Thank you. Out.